Hola muchachos, ¿qué tal? Buenos días. Aquí tienen el horario para hoy, lunes, el 18 de abril. No homework was due for today. Hope you all had a wonderful holiday weekend, for those of you that celebrate the Easter holiday. Our learning targets for today are to continue to talk about our childhood using the imperfect tense and the target vocabulary that we began taking a look at the beginning of this chapter last week, and in general to be able to express habitual events in the imperfect tense and to practice those conjugations. Your warm-up for today is to indicate the infinitive form of the underlined imperfect conjugation in each sentence. Indicate the infinitive. Remember, the infinitive is just a basic unconjugated form of the verb. So the infinitive will end in AR, ER, or IR. So you're going to take the conjugation that's underlined, conjugation in the imperfect, and just put it into the infinitive, ending in AR, ER, IR. It's base form. You can see the examples there. Típicamente me despertaba a las 10:30 durante las vacaciones de Navidad. So me despertaba is the yo form of the verb. The infinitive, despertarse. That would be the answer for the first example. For the second, en el jardín infantil, yo comía uvas y bebía jugo de manzana. At kinder or at daycare, I used to eat grapes and used to drink apple juice. And the infinitive of those two verbs would be the verb comer and beber. So you're going to do the same thing for numbers 1 through 5. The conjugations there highlighted. What are the infinitive of those verbs? And that's essentially practicing the notes that we took last class. On page 194, we talked about the imperfect. We talked about how we've thus far we've covered two forms of the past. The first form of the past is what's called the preterite, or simple past tense. It's used to talk about actions already completed in the past. And now we're focusing our attention on the imperfect, not talking about actions that happened only once in the past, but rather repeatedly. The key word there, repeatedly. In English, we would use the phrase used to or kept on doing something that was repeated or habitual. In Spanish, we use the imperfect. Your endings of regular AR, ER, and IR verbs there. And the video we took a look at last class goes to the beat of Lady Gaga, and hopefully a little catchy. To get you guys to really memorize those endings and know them by heart, they came up with this song. Love it, love it, love it. So that video is right there if you want to play that back a little bit to get familiar with those regular endings that we saw. And again, those are on page 194. We highlighted how the yo form and the ella form are the same in the imperfect. And for that reason, the subject pronouns yo and ella usted are often included when we conjugate verbs in those two forms in the imperfect. And then we also talked about accents above the A, only above the A in the nosotros form for AR verbs. However, above the I in all forms for ER and IR verbs. Adverbs of frequency are context clues for the imperfect. And you can see those highlighted in green. And then we outlined on page 111 the context clues used for the preterite. Time markers like anoche, last night, or ayer, yesterday. La semana pasada, el mes pasado, el año pasado would be last week, last month, or last year. These are all referring to specific moments in the past, completed, happening only once, and that's what we use the preterite for. So for the rest of class, we're going to go over, or finish going over, the guided practice, exercises 14 and 15. For exercise 14, you had to do two things. Let me pull it up here for you. The first thing you had to do was figure out which of the two verbs made sense to use according to the greater context, and then you had to conjugate the verb in the imperfect according to the subject. This is about Margarita's childhood. For example, número uno, cuando era niña, mis hermanos y yo pasábamos. Nosotros pasábamos tiempo en la casa de nuestros abuelos de vez en cuando. Pasar tiempo means to spend time. Pensar is to think. So, pasar in the nosotros form for number one. Number two, mi abuela preparaba. Mi abuela preparaba galletas muy ricas y preparaba galletas are cookies. So we're going to say preparar in the ella form. For number three, our subject is nosotros. And we want to say we ate them being the cookies. So comer in the nosotros form would be comíamos. Nosotros las comíamos en el patio. That's exercise 14. For exercise 15, you guys are taking turns facilitating the conversation, asking one another, hey, did you used to do these activities with your neighbors growing up? It's going to sound like this.
¿Jugaban ustedes con los vecinos?
No, nunca jugábamos con los vecinos.
¿Jugaban ustedes con los vecinos?
No, nunca jugábamos con los vecinos.
So the question is in the ustedes form because you are asking your partner, like, hey, you and your neighbors, did you guys do these things together? So you're going to ask, if you're doing part A, you're going to ask the question in the ustedes form, conjugating all these verbs, 1 through 6, in the ustedes form. Montaban en triciclo con los vecinos? Did you ride bikes with your neighbors? Saltaban ustedes con los vecinos? Did you and your neighbors used to jump rope? Saltar a la cuerda? Corrían en el parque? Did you all used to run around in the park? So all these verbs, and the vocabulary can be found on page 208. If there are any of these that you're not familiar with, 208, page 208 has the glossary. So all of them for part A are going to be in the ustedes form, again, because you're asking your partner and his or her neighbors. And so if the question's in the ustedes form, then the response will be in the nosotros form, because it's your partner and on behalf of their neighbors as well. No, nunca jugábamos con los vecinos. So whatever verb in the ustedes form for part A is going to be in the nosotros form for the response for part B. Nunca meaning never, never used to play with my neighbors. Or sí, jugábamos con los vecinos de vez en cuando. So question part A in the ustedes form, response, whether affirmatively or negatively, is going to be in the nosotros form, like you can see there in the bubble. Your homework for next class is guided workbook pages 137 to 38. Super easy, the guided side, because they give you everything that you need from the notes. There you have the regular endings of AR, ER, and IR verbs, and everything that we've talked about with regard to accents, and the fact that the yo form and the el, ella, usted form are the same for all three types of verbs. For part A, you guys are writing the infinitive of each conjugated verb. It's just like what you all did for your warm-up earlier today, right? Taking the verb as it's conjugated and converting it into the infinitive. So taking a look at the example, jugaba, that would be the verb jugar in the infinitive. And how do I know, like, whether it's an AR, ER, or IR verb? You're going to look at the ending, yeah? Molestaba, aba is an AR verb ending, so just take off the imperfect ending and replace it with the infinitive ending, AR. So molestaba would change to molestar. Coleccionaban, aban is an imperfect ending, take that off. An AR ending, so we're going to put AR instead, and you would get coleccionar. Whether a verb is ER or IR, you can look it up in the dictionary for confirmation, because the endings are shared. Look it up in the dictionary to confirm whether it's an ER or an IR verb if you're not sure. And again, page 208 is where you can also go. For part B, you guys are adding the AR ending only that fits according to the subject. For example, tú hablabas con mucha gente. For part C, you're doing the same thing, just for ER and IR verbs, the ending that would belong there. Remember, ER and IR verbs are different from AR endings. For example, yo obedecía a mis padres. Ia would be the yo ending for an ER verb like obedecer. And then finally for part D, again, page 208 gives you all the vocabulary, the glossary. You're taking the verb that's provided there at the end of the sentence and conjugating it according to the subject provided at the beginning. Mario saltaba a la cuerda. And that is your homework for next class, y'all. Keep in mind your project is also going to be due the second week of May. We'll be spending a little bit more time on that together in class moving forward. Have a wonderful rest of your day, y'all. Adios. Nos vemos.